Richard, there are a host of arguments that atheists give to demonstrate the non-existence of God. I'm going to give you some. I'd like to get your reactions. Top of the list, problem of evil.
God allows evil because he allows us a free choice of whether to bring about good or evil, and he makes us responsible for each other and the world. And if we're to be really responsible, we must have a choice of doing harm or good. And he also allows natural evils in the form of tsunamis and earthquakes and diseases in order to give us the chance to respond by being courageous or being patient in the face of these evils. And he allows us to be sympathetic or not sympathetic to other people in the face of these evils. So they make possible us having responsibility for each other and to form our own character.
God is hidden.
Well, what's usually meant by that is it's not obvious that there is a God. True, but if it were obvious that there is a God and that he had the traditional properties, this would mean that we would realize, it would be obvious, every one of our actions was overseen by a perfectly good being who would be taking account of us. And if we really knew that and knew he was watching us, if we have any natural goodness, we will want to, as it were, please such a being who is looking on us. And so we would be so naturally inclined to do the good that we wouldn't have a serious choice between good and evil. It would be like goings on in the nursery where mother is looking in all the time. You don't hit your brother when mother is looking in all the time. You hit your brother when you think mother isn't there. It's necessary for God to keep some distance, because if we really were totally conscious of his presence in this way, the temptation to do evil would be very much less.
God is a disembodied mind, and we have never seen any instance of mind or consciousness other than with embodied brains.
Yes, but any account of human beings has got to think of them as having two parts, a body and a soul. And we have to bring souls into account to describe ourselves, because a very simple thought experiment, imagine your brain taken out of your skull and half of the brain put into another empty skull and the other half of the brain putting into a second empty skull, and bits taken from your clone so that put in these empty skulls, and you make the new brains in the empty skulls work again so that you have two living people. Now, which of them is you? Well, they both behave like you and have some of your thoughts and memories, but there would be an unknown truth as to which is you. Clearly, either you might or might not have survived the operation, but mere knowledge of everything in the physical world would not show that you had survived the operation, and yet there is a truth. And that would show that being you is something other than and beyond everything concerned with the physical. And that shows that what you are is something non-physical. You are whatever it is that goes from the original you to one of these half brains, but you don't know which. So we're already familiar with a spirit which is essentially immaterial. So there's nothing totally remote from our general awareness of the world in postulating a God who has this character.
Another argument for the non-existence of God is the violence in the universe.
What sort of violence do you have in mind? Do you have in mind the planets clashing into each other?
Sure, asteroids, comets, chaos.
What on earth is wrong with that? Violence is a bad thing, of course, if people get hurt and feel pain, but the smashing of one comet into a planet is a beautiful thing. When we saw, I think it was several years ago, that a comet smashed into Jupiter, and it was watched by everybody on telly as a beautiful thing. the behavior, the regular behavior of the stars and the planets, the regular behavior on top of which there are explosions producing new stars and new planets, these are part of the dance of the heavens. They're wonderful.
How about the wastefulness of the universe? All this activity, it seems so inefficient if human beings are the object of this whole thing.
Well, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and God is not short of paint. If we waste material, we throw away something that could be useful, and therefore we deprive ourselves of material which could be put to a better use. But God has an infinite number of materials, and nothing can get wasted in that sense. He can create any material he wants for any purpose, but I think the question you're in effect asking is what's good about the vast numbers of galaxies, stars, planets, and so on, which are probably almost all uninhabited? Answer, well, just look through the telescope. It's a very beautiful thing. It's a dance. People in the Middle Ages, when they had a great deal less knowledge of all the wonders of the heavens, talked of the music of the spheres, the music which was so beautiful that humans couldn't hear it, of the spheres which carried the planets round the Earth. And we can see it. We can see through our telescopes not merely, or not at all really, how it is at present, but how it was in the past and how it gradually evolved. And even if no one else can see it, God can see it. Just as a painting is a beautiful thing, so a living and vast painting is a beautiful thing, and that's what the universe is.
How about Steven Weinberg's famous comment that the more the universe seems comprehensible, the more it also seems pointless?
Well, it might or might not be pointless if there was no God, but even so, I don't think that's right. It's good in itself, these inanimate wonders, and if they throw up life, as they sometimes do, a conscious life, this is wonderful. It's wonderful for anybody to have an experience for half a second, to be aware of things for half a second. And there's lots of people with lots of awareness having lots of happiness in pretty mundane ways. That's good in itself. But of course, even better is the ability to think and rationalize about things, and above all, given that there is a God, to come to know an omnipotent and omniscient being who can help us to perfect goodness and to understand progressively over infinite time the wonders of the universe.
How about the religious contradictions? All the different religions of the world with hosts of different doctrines which fight with each other. Doesn't this show the non-existence of God?
The fact of there being different religions, some of whose essential propositions are contradictory, gives us the opportunity to think through which are right. We're not given the answer. We're asked to look around and see which makes the best sense of the world, or not to bother. And we therefore have the chance to try and find out if there's God and get to know him, or not bother, and that's one of our greatest choices.
What about religious wars, when different religions fight with each other? Doesn't that show the absurdity of the existence of a God supposedly behind all of these?
Religions differ in the extent to which they permit wars for the purpose of expansion. But certainly the Christian religion provides no justification for having wars of expansion. And the fact that Christians have conducted such wars is a terrible thing. But it only illustrates the obvious fact that people often don't live up to their principles and hide from themselves the parts of their religious creed which limit them from doing what they feel a natural inclination to do by way of bashing up the neighbours. religion is provided to make saints. It doesn't start with people being saints, and it's terrible when it's taken over for the wrong purpose. But that only shows the need for a thorough religion and not an abused religion.
Scholars would say that every fundamental scripture of every major religion either has overt contradictions within them or flagrantly misstates some facts of the world or science or something. So doesn't that invalidate any revelation from a God in any scripture?
It rather depends on the religion. For some religions, the book, the written text, is the revelation, and that, I think, is a correct description of Islam. The Quran is the revelation. That is not so for Christianity, because for Christianity, the revelation was a person, Jesus Christ, who taught a message and whose message was propagated by the church. That finally endorsed a Bible somewhere around the 4th century, but it endorsed that Bible with all sorts of qualifications, that some of it was written for an ignorant people, as Aquinas put it, and therefore it expressed its message in terms of outdated science or mistaken history, and all the fathers, the theologians of the early church, made the point that a lot of the Bible couldn't be taken literally and so on. That is often forgotten by modern Christians, especially by modern Protestants who think the Bible is the Christian religion. The Christian religion is the church and its central teaching, e.g. its creeds, and the Bible as interpreted in the light of those creeds and in the light of what we know about what else God has done by way of science or history.
I'm not sure that strengthens your argument, because if one looks at church history and some of the things that they have espoused, they seem a lot worse than stuff that's in the Bible.
Well, I think it depends what you have in mind, but the phrase I used, I think, was central doctrines, and what I meant by central doctrines, the doctrines which the church councils had seen as codifying the essence of the Christian religion, and the central doctrine, which is espoused by all Christian bodies which derived from the early church, which is still extant, is the Nicene Creed. And I don't think the Nicene Creed is open to that sort of accusation. Of course, certain branches of Christianity have at times propagated certain doctrines, but the Church has always recognized that one has to work out doctrines, and not everything that somebody is espousing at a given time has really captured the essence of Christianity. But what Christian councils have endorsed and subsequent councils have endorsed and has been universally recognized, that I would stand by.
Well, that's my atheistic list. What do you think of the totality of it?
It doesn't work.